This video is sponsored by the Acme Corporation. Acme is the most trusted manufacturer of roadrunner trapping technology in North America. If Acme is good enough for coyotes, it's good enough for you. Acme Corporation is not responsible for any injuries, earth-shattering kabooms, or physics-defying malfunctions sustained while using Acme products. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and today we celebrate a very special birthday. On this date, July 27th, a true legend was born. An all-American icon, a star of the silver screen, and a decorated war hero. He always speaks his mind, never backs down from a challenge, and retained his youthful energy despite being prematurely gray. I speak naturally of Bugs Bunny. And on this day, I choose to commemorate the occasion by analyzing one of his more controversial entries into the filmography, that being Looney Tunes Back in Action. Now I know what you're thinking. Of all the things I could have picked, why this one? It doesn't exactly have the best reputation. Well, I chose this film because I think it's unfairly maligned. Sure, it's not Who Framed Roger Rabbit, despite a similar visual style, but it doesn't really need to be in order to succeed. All it needs to be is Looney Tunes, and at this, I would say it succeeds for the most part. I mean, heck, it's truer to the spirit of Looney Tunes than most of what came after it. Okay, it's not controversial to say Lunatics Unleashed was a mistake from the outset, but I never enjoyed the Looney Tunes show either, and the less said about Rabbit's Run, the better. New Looney Tunes is okay, I suppose, but it's also wildly inconsistent. So in a way, Looney Tunes Back in Action is almost a last hurrah for the classic style that made the series work. I mean, sure, you could say the movie recycles a lot of the classic gags, but I don't consider that in and of itself to be a bad thing. If it just rehashed all of the old ground without putting any effort into it, then we'd have a problem, but I really don't think that's the case. Consider the chase scene through the Louvre in which Bugs, Daffy, and Elmer leap in and out of multiple paintings. Sure, it isn't necessarily a new idea, but look at the amount of detail in here. With each new painting entered, the characters' appearances change accordingly, and a high level of energy is maintained throughout. It may be a variation of something we've seen before, but the filmmakers didn't use that familiarity as an excuse to be lazy, and as a result, I consider it a highlight of the film. And of course, these familiar moments coexist alongside new material and self-referential nods to past mistakes.
Let's do some drills.
This doesn't make a lick of sense.
I could even do an in-depth analysis of the Area 52 segment and all of the references made within it, but perhaps I'll do that in a different video. Of course, that's not to say it's perfect. It's got flaws aplenty. While I respect all of the voice acting on display, something about the voices occasionally sounds a bit off, like they were all pitched just a bit too high while mixing.
I claim this planet in the name of Mars!
Disgusting earth rodent.
Not all of the gags land either, though that happens in nearly every comedy. It's also hard to ignore that some of the characters are there simply to be there. Marvin the Martian, Yosemite Sam, and Wile E. Coyote are all active in the plot, but the Tasmanian Devil doesn't do anything significant other than eat Ron Perlman, though that is an admittedly funny moment. And of course, when you look through the deleted scenes, it becomes apparent that maybe the film didn't have the clearest vision of where it wanted to go or what it wanted to do. Whether that was thanks to executive meddling or free-form filmmaking, I don't know. But it's not inaccurate to say the film is a whole bunch of set pieces strung very loosely together. However, Looney Tunes Back in Action has at least one thing going for it that elevates it above other recent fare. It actually demonstrates a proper understanding of who Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck are, and it expresses this understanding by taking their longtime rivalry to its extreme conclusion, while also adding just a hint of dramatic deconstruction. The plot begins with Daffy finally deciding he's had enough of playing second fiddle to Bugs, leading him to declare an ultimatum which gets him fired from the new Looney Tunes film being made. Yeah, this movie plays around with its fourth wall quite liberally, as anything involving these characters should. From the beginning, we see that the dynamic between the duo, though familiar, is slightly different than what we've seen before. Daffy still sees Bugs as competition, that much is the same, but Bugs' attitude is just a bit different. Usually when we see these two together, Bugs behaves in a cool and aloof manner, sometimes feigning obliviousness to Daffy's behavior, sometimes subtly prodding him into being hoist by his own petard. That's still the case in this movie, but there's a new element added. Here, Bugs is Daffy's advocate from the very beginning. He offers to step down so Daffy can have the spotlight, he gives Daffy assistance so he can leave the backlot on his own terms, and he immediately starts campaigning for Daffy to be rehired. He's still cool and aloof about it, but this clearly shows that Bugs is quite fond of Daffy and is pulling for him to succeed. At the same time, though, we get a line foreshadowing that maybe Bugs isn't as helpful as he thinks he is.
Daffy always comes back. I just tell him how much I need him.
Seems like a nice sentiment at first, until he elaborates.
We hug, we cry, I drop something heavy on him, I laugh.
We'll explore that further when the time is right. Of course, Bugs knows that the movie won't work if Daffy's not in it, and when he convinces the Warner Brothers that he's right by taking a shot to the face for the first time in his life, he also makes a point of going to personally bring Daffy back. While it's always been the case that Bugs doesn't consider Daffy an enemy, all of this cements the idea that he does consider him a friend. Yet Daffy never reciprocates this sentiment and constantly refuses to return to Hollywood. Normally Bugs' coaxing would work, but this time it doesn't. It turns out there's a reason why, and it's revealed in the campfire scene, which is as close as you can get to a genuinely dramatic moment with these characters. Bugs starts out trying to boost Daffy's ego.
I heard the Warner Brothers say you were their best duck.
Like I said, normally that would work, but Daffy's not buying it this time, and he explains why.
Flattered though I may be, flattened I will not, in order for you to get the laugh.
It seems Daffy genuinely is fed up. He doesn't want to go back because he knows going back means once again being the butt of every joke. That makes this extremely unfortunate for him.
And your tail is on fire. Exactly my point. Oh, really, your tail's on fire.
Bugs attempts to turn this ironically timed bit of slapstick in Daffy's favor.
Daff, you're accident prone.
It's not much, sure, but it implies that what Bugs values about Daffy is that he naturally fits the role of the stooge. Remember that line from earlier?
We hug, we cry, I drop something heavy on him, I laugh.
Bugs may be pulling for Daffy, but he still sees Daffy in a very specific way. That means the rabbit is not prepared for the duck's reply.
What am I talking to you for?
And why is that?
All you have to do is munch on a carrot and people love you.
And Bugs' response? Nothing. Now that's an eye-opening moment. In fact, it's the closest we've ever seen these two come to being genuinely serious. In this moment, Daffy essentially tells Bugs, "You don't understand. In fact, I don't think you can understand because you've never been in my shoes." Daffy has literally worked himself to death multiple times trying to keep up with Bugs, and the result is always a laugh at his expense. Bugs, meanwhile, has it easy, never having to be debased in the same way to win the audience's favor. And for once in his life, Bugs Bunny, the master of witty banter and snappy comebacks, is rendered speechless. He says nothing because what can he say? He spent the whole movie thinking he's sticking up for his friend, only to learn that his overtures haven't won Daffy over because it's not what Daffy really needs. His attempts to help the duck have been misguided, and he hasn't been the friend he thought he was. After that, the scene simply fades to black. There's no last-minute gag or instant resolution. The scene simply ends with a sense that things need to change. And from that point on, they do. No attention is drawn to it, but it is there. After this scene, Bugs stops pushing Daffy to come back and instead tags along with him. Their interactions also change. Though Bugs still busts Daffy's chops throughout, the two start acting less like rivals and more like a team following this little heart-to-heart. By the end, the board has been set in such a way that finally allows Daffy Duck, after a few hiccups, to have his moment of glory while in the guise of his most famous alter ego, Duck Dodgers. A moment I think many fans have always secretly wanted to see. Of course, none of this is too dramatic of a shift for either of them. Upon their return to Earth, it's clear they're still the same rabbit and duck we've always known, even with a slightly new dynamic in place. Still, Looney Tunes Back in Action was able to bring these two in directions they had never gone before, and in so doing, cast both of them in a new light. It's all thanks to this one scene which chose, for just a moment, to not treat the characters as jokes, and instead treat them as people. That's why I think Looney Tunes Back in Action should be held in slightly higher regard than it usually is. It managed to do something new without losing sight of the truth about who these characters are. And for doing that, I think it deserves some credit. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni viewer saying, that's all, folks. And yet, in spite of all of this, it's Space Jam that's getting the sequel. Sometimes life is even stranger than a cartoon. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, as well as subscribe to the channel for more content of a similar nature. Also, check the description for links to our Twitter, DeviantArt, and Patreon pages, as well as the Amazon link for the novel Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, penned by yours truly. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.